It's September 7th, 152. And I'm just like, so much stuff is happening that I don't know how to organize it into any kind of coherent narrative because it's global chaos and everything's artificially being held together by the Fed and by the European central bankers by buying up all the debt. And they have to keep this illusion that we aren't going to fall through the that we aren't going to fall into anarchy and civil war and rioting, food riots, and everything else, or the Democrats are going to lose both houses of Congress. So the propaganda machine has to keep people pacified to the point of believing that uh, things will turn around, or that you know, Biden, let's call him Biden, is saying there's 1% inflation, or there's 0% inflation this month, and the underlying fundamentals are sound. If there's one piece of information that's positive, like there's an uptick in employment or whatever, though you'll hear only that one piece of information. You won't hear the, you know, uh, tsunami of disturbing information. You'll hear very little about anything to do with the liquidity crisis or a sell-off all across, in everything, or there being no place for investors to put their money because everything's going down. Everybody and anybody's saying, there was one financial guy I listened to, he said, anybody that says there's only 2% maybe of people that aren't losing value in investments and bank, savings and whatnot. So the big players can absorb it because they own stuff, but the home middle class is just getting destroyed. But meanwhile, you're continually being hit with one so much false information. There's so much fantasy information that never changes. I mean, when I listen to the Nomi Prince saying to invest in some kind of component for electric cars, that she's located with this company or whatever, and they start out by saying how she'd made wrong predictions, in the past here and there, and I'm hearing that, and it's the same ad that I heard a year ago. There's the same company, so it's just this. There's this kind of static notion in most financial advisors that I listen to, where they're living in a world of abstractions. It doesn't they don't have any idea what's going on in Europe. They don't have any idea what's going on. I hear one talk about, hopefully the Ukrainians will hold off the Russian offensive. Well, it's like it's a Ukrainian offensive that's been defeated, and you know, the Ukrainian army just keeps getting wiped out as they're being thrown into the, like cannon fodder. So that's so unstable uh, in the first place, but there's no chance of there being a NATO victory. But the financial people are completely living in a world of abstraction where they think that uh, they're not factoring in uh, what is going to happen this winter in Europe because of all the gas shortages, because Putin the other day shut down all of gas delivery until the sanctions are lifted on Russia. So in other words, he's playing he's playing the strong hand. He has the strong hand, And NATO's, as far as I can tell, because they're insane. The World Economic Forum and the powers that be are not going to. They're going to let all these people freeze to death and food riots and the notion that you can build a financial prediction or model around a world that's going into cardiac arrest. You know, businesses, 70% of businesses or restaurants are expected to shut down because they can't pay the energy costs. The energy costs are tripled, quadruple, 5 times. People are stopping paying them now, even before they've started escalating. So being in America is so bizarre because it's like the censorship of conversation wherever you go is such that they you can't bring up any subjects that are going to puncture this false reality, a false belief system that's worked, more or less, and that. But it's all based on liquidity. It's all based on credit. It's all based on ready credit. Let's say with Marsha, she's got a fleet of credit cards. She'll get a credit card from Discount Tires or Target. I don't know what do you know about stuff like that? Do you know people? Do you have 2 credit cards, 3, 5, 10?
I have no credit cards.
Well, that's good. Most people.
We don't have credit cards.
Yeah. Well, see, I'm looking at like the people in this line of criminals. The liberal criminals, let's call them. They live with this positive. You can take out as much credit as you want because you're always going to have a job and it's always guaranteed because you have people in the teachers unions.
Well, I guess that's
right?
not true. I have a credit card. I always use my credit card. I just always pay it off. So I have no.
No, I'm not talking about you. I'm just wondering, like who you know of, because the people I know.
I don't know.
In this fantasy world, fantasy art world, and entertainment world and Hollywood world, where they always have to have the latest fashions and the latest designer dresses and everything. That one, how are you going to pay for it with a credit card? But their mindset is that there's always going to be credit. So they take out more and more credit from the equity in their house. Equity in their house disappears if the housing market slumps, then you don't have that equity. And that's what happened in '08. People were immediately underwater. So my belief is that November is going to be this explosion. If the Republicans gain Congress, then you'll have immediate investigations of Biden corrupted. Hunter Biden will be in jail, and it goes all the way up to Obama. The whole Steele dossier that was created. This is not the Biden administration; it's Obama 3 administration. Now, a lot of the people I listen to, like the prophets, and that are the conspiracy theorists, these are like little small fry that I listen to. I don't listen to I listen to a lot of, nobodies, basically. But they've been incredibly accurate and incredibly consistent in line with Celestial's prophecies. And one thing that everybody's consistent on is Obama is an antichrist. He's an antichrist figure. Some people are saying he's going to assume power again. There will be, he's pulling the. So I'm really looking at something like that as a scenario. If there's some military coup or whatever, because they're setting the stage for that with all this talk of MAGA terrorists, that these people are a threat, that Trump is a threat to our democracy. This is the invective that a lot of people are laughing. Like I listen to European news, Sky News or whatever. Biden's an idiot and he's a vegetable and he's mummy. Well, that may be true, but it doesn't take away from the fact that he has all of these, the president of the greatest superpower in the world, the greatest military superpower. Our spending on weaponry just dwarfs any other country. I mean, we're giving it all away and it's the stuff that's going to Ukraine is going into the black market. We don't even trace where all that weaponry is going. And like you saw in Afghanistan, we just give it all away. So I'm not personalizing it. I'm seeing that there is going to be a big confrontation with reality come the elections, where I have every expectation that they're going to steal them, or they're going to suspend them, or there'll be some kind of, what a false flag operation is, right? Mm-hmm. There'll be a false flag. Well, that's what the six events were. That's a false flag. I mean, it's real easy to see something like that, because what you do is you get a bunch of yahoos and you give them the plans and you let them into the, you set them off to blow up a bridge or something, and then you arrest them, and then you say we caught the terrorists. So it's like there's no way those people are going to breach security, in at the Capitol building, unless, and this is what they did, they took the police manning one part of the barrier and had them go somewhere else. And so they knew where they were directing, so they're led, and you watch them on footage I was watching at the time. They're filming them coming up the Capitol steps, the guy with the coonskin hat or whatever. So yeah, these guys are authentic, whatever they are. I don't even follow it, if they're white supremacists, terrorists, or whatever. Yeah, there's a handful of crazy people, and who knows who those people are, and who's running them, who's what. Just like with the Black Panther Party, back in the '60s and '70s, there was a book about the Black Panthers that one of them said there were more FBI agents at a Black Panther meeting than there were Black Panthers. They're called agent provocateurs. They put FBI or agents inside an organization. Then they incite them, like with Earth First, right? They incite them to go out and destroy property, and then they arrest them all and say that we got the terrorists. So they push them into, and it's very, these people aren't that bright. Let's put it that way, who are running these revolutionary organizations. It's not like Aldrich Cleaver is a Harvard scholar. Who the Harvard scholar is Barack Obama, and the CIA guys that can outsmart these guys, and outsmart, if they control the media, outsmart the American people. It's not a far out prediction to see this kind of dictatorship not being Trump, but it being it's ostensibly called the Democratic Party, right, Colin? But it's both parties. It's Fox. It's the Republicans and the Democrats. It's the Masonic order. It's the unseen hand. It's the kingdom of the Prince of Lies, whatever terms that can be used. And something really bad is going to happen having to do with the Great Reset. And I'm not sure that I can predict anything that will happen without it. It's one thing I don't even think about. What I do think about is getting people to take seriously this awareness that there's a Jesus Christ and there's a God and there's the Holy Spirit and there's a Bible that's unlike any other book. I mean, the Bible is not like a normal book. I mean, if you say Crowley has his metaphysical, the Thelema religion that you know, Kenneth Anger and uh, Jimmy Page and Bobby Beausoleil and all these different people are war, and it's hard. Who knows to what extent they are now? But the religion of Thelema has its initiation rites and all of that. So it's a magical book, and it's a perfectly powerful magical book. But the Bible is a magical text as well. People don't want. They seem to think it's all you know, oh, that's from ancient times, and it never really happened. And what they wrote, the modern movement in general is to decertify the Bible as being the Word of God, the literal Word of God, and the living Word of God. So that's what I'm uh, oriented toward, and my purpose is. I don't even see myself as you know, I'll make some drawings, you know, to pass the time, but where my orientation is to make people aware of what's at stake with this struggle between good and evil in their own mind. That's one thing that was hit me when I was younger, and why I was, you can say I was like you know, angry at God or didn't believe in God, or how could a loving God, how could a loving God make me a battleground between Satan and Jesus? You know, in other words, that dramatization where you have the evil devil in one ear and then your angel in one ear, that this is you know, ridiculous. It does it, you know, why would God do that and say, well, you know, who am I to question God? At a certain point, it's like you are. There is a battle for your mind that's going on from the time you're born into, you know, you're born in a sinful state. That's man's nature. I'm just going to use man instead of whatever the political correct terminology is. So man's nature is to be depraved. This is biblical because of the original sin of Adam and Eve in the garden with temptation by the serpent. So the origin of sin and evil is at the fall. It was a perfect creation that was corrupted. And so you have that inclination towards depravity. All children, like Freud called it polymorphous perversity. You know, masturbatory, but pansexual or androgynous. And so, without the law of God, without God, you'll fall right into, yeah, I have a sex change operation, or I can do anything I want. That's what Satanism is expressed in the words of the Thelemite religion, which is, you know, do what thou wilt. That's the whole of the law. You don't need all of these 10 commandments because those are going to inhibit you. They're going to inhibit you if, you know, like honor your father and mother. You know, what my father and mother are going to tell me what to do, and I'm going to honor them. Well, they're oppressing me, and that's the Oedipal complex. So with the '60s generation, it became Jim Morrison, you know, verbalizing the Oedipal complex and exposing himself on stage or not exposing himself on stage, or exposing himself when he was going off stage. And it's a complete uh, anti-Christianity sets in the counterculture from its inception. It's the whole basis of the counterculture that's in Warhol's films and Burroughs and Ginsberg and Kenneth Anger. So the beatniks, who are they're the original kicks. You know, life is get on your kicks, get on the road and go out there and go on the wildlife, take a walk on the wild side. And its culmination now is in a society that doesn't have any moral compass whatsoever. It's reversed itself so that good is evil and evil is good. If you say anything to limit the sexual freedom, abortion freedom, freedom to, rob banks, or it's even gotten to that point where it's a revolving door where people are, that commit assault, they're in and out of prison so they can go to the next place. There's the green lighting of immigrants. There's no country in the world that has open borders that just says, come on in. We'll give you a credit card and we'll bus you. This is another of it's not even an irony, it's just an absurdity, is that the Biden administration were busing people all over the country, the immigrants, as they came into presumably liberal districts. There's some 2 million people. Now Abbott is specifically busing them into DC and into New York City and Chicago, and the Democrats are all screaming bloody murder that he's doing. Well, they were doing it only a few months ago. So there's no concern for the future of the country. It's the opposite. They're definitely, by design, destroying the middle class, destroying the financial system, and that's all coming from this New World Order, World Economic Forum, Council on Foreign Relations, Bilderberg Group. There are any number of the CIA, the FBI, the IRS. The good has become evil. You have the reverse, because you started out in the 60s, and who were the evil people? It was the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover. It was the CIA was evil. It was these, nefarious corporate behemoths that were the establishment that had to be overthrown. And the more I investigated, the deeper the levels of evil are. And, it's almost like you can pick any one person. Like if I pick Kenneth Anger, right? He's a disciple of Aleister Crowley. So I go to an interview with Kenneth Anger with John Emanuel this morning. And Anger says, it's all baloney, because he's talking cultural stuff. But the first thing he's asked is about his interest in magic. And he said, well, I'm not interested in pulling a rabbit out of a hat. And that imagery hits me right away, of course, because Bright Rabbit and Lewis Carroll's Rabbit and the Bohemian place where the Picasso was, and then the avant-garde Parisian artist was the Lapin Agile. It's all this rabbit symbolism that keeps coming up. And so but it's not the pulling the rabbit out of the hat or going down the rabbit hole, you'd say. It's the,
I said it once.
I know, and I'm never going to let you forget
Jeez.
it. And
Watch what you said.
well, because
It's okay.
it is going down a rabbit hole, but it's like there are different levels, and you have to. It's like I put it more like the Minotaur. You know the story of the Minotaur.
I mean, I know what they are.
You have to go in the labyrinth.
Oh,
So I see the rabbit because that was my last show. It's called in the Labyrinth, and it's what's in this the symbolism in The Shining, right? In the where Jack Nicholson freezes to death in the labyrinth that's outside
it's like a hedge maze.
the hotel. Yeah, it's a hedge maze, and the labyrinth is you go into it and you have to get your way out of it. So you need to go down further and further into understanding the sources of this. And when Anger said he's with the OTO, you know, he's 11th order OTO. I didn't know what the OTO was. You know, I know it's Crowley. I knew, you know, Crowley was the Order of the Golden Dawn, but Crowley took over the OTO. The OTO, let me look it up because I don't want to get it wrong. Crowley took over the OTO from somebody else. And he's German. And it's called the Ordo Templi Orientis, Order of the Temple of the East, or Order of the Oriental Templars. It's an occult initiatory organization founded at the beginning of the 20th century. The origins of the OTO can be traced back to the German-speaking occultists, and one of them is Theodore Reuss, or Reuss. So the Crowley takes it over from this Reuss, and it was created, you know, 1855 to 1923. Reuss collaborated with Kellner in creating the OTO and succeeded him after Kellner's death. And in 1902, Reuss and a couple others purchased the right to perform the rite, R-A-G-H-T, to perform the rite, R-A-T-E, of Memphis. That's Memphis, Egypt, Memphis, Tennessee. Of Memphis, that's referring to the Egyptian city, and Mizraim, of Freemasonry, okay? So it's a Freemason organization, English Freemason John Yarker. That's what I mean about all these intersecting now, right? Although these rites are considered to be irregular, they, along with the Swedenborg rite, form the core of the newly established order. Now, Swedenborg's a, you know, philosopher that influenced Baudelaire. Like I'm reading about Baudelaire and mystic, occult belief systems of the mid-19th century. So all these are, like I say, it's a spider's web. It's all these tendrils that you find running throughout the Templars and the Rosicrucians and the Freemasons. And if you go to any one, you know, Theosophical societies, the Gurdjieff group, the Blavatsky group, the Steiner, and the Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor, or of light. So Satan's an angel of light. Lucifer is always going to appear as, you know, a universal brotherhood, you know, the universal rights of man, all of the French liberty, equality, right? These freedoms, but the freedoms are reserved for the elite. when the Declaration of Independence was written, it's talking about our freedoms. It's talking about our right to happiness. Well, our right to happiness only includes the brotherhood of deists or masons, the people who own the country. One thing that was really fascinating to me with Celestial that I also come to understand is like the Native Americans violated God's laws, and so they were destroyed by the next people of God for their paganism, their savagery, all this. So now we're being destroyed for our paganism. God gave us all of this country and gave us all this bounty and shed His grace on thee, like in the original Christian groups that built this fantastic web of small towns and industry and farms and agriculture and invented. And then it goes into the Industrial Revolution and starts when all of this things start appearing. The Gnostic Catholic Church is part of it. So that's what you see out in the Benedictine monastery. That's Gnostics, and the Gnostics are the popular, best-selling New York Times novelist or nonfiction writer on religion, Elaine Pagels. And Pagels is connected with her spiritual mentor is Thomas Keating at the Benedictine monastery where I went and had this experience of God and born again experience, which is where everything started, was starting to see that the Catholic Church, the Christian churches are all infiltrated with this Masonic, occult, satanic churches, all interwoven. And so, my belief in end times comes from all of that. Now the Luxor, there's the Luxor is the pyramid out in Las Vegas. You know about that? That's my first experience in Las Vegas was at the Luxor, staying there for one night. It was on the way to LA. So Royce meets Crowley in 1910 and admitted him to the first 3 degrees of the Ordo Templi Orientis. So Ordo is order. 2 years later, Crowley was placed in charge of Great Britain and Ireland and was advanced to the 10th degree. So he moves right up to the top ranks of being put in charge of Great Britain and Ireland. And that's where he's, that's how he's connected to Jimmy Page and the Beatles and everything else. The Rolling Stones, they're all connected to Crowley, coming from this Masonic, Gnostic order with its own rituals of power and its belief system that you are God, essentially. Do what thou wilt means you are the supreme and holy king of Ireland. Crowley then went to Berlin to obtain instructional manuscripts and the title of Supreme and Holy King of Ireland. So he's he's Christ on earth, and that's his kingdom that will extend out from Ireland. And that's where the church has collapsed. The Catholic Church in Ireland has completely collapsed, and it's collapsed under all these pedophile scandals and everything else. Gnosticism, let's call it. And at some time later, let's see, like 1919, Crowley attempted to work this Masonic-based OTO in Detroit, Michigan. Isn't that interesting? Now, Detroit is where you get all of this Iggy Pop, punk, and the MC5 political revolutionaries. The MC5 were, violent revolution, uh, Motown, all of the connections I can make, right, from following Crowley's movements. It's right into the entertainment industry. James Brown, all of this stuff, and I'll hear that music. That music is like the carnal music is what's behind Satanism. What's behind Satan is carnality or the flesh. So here you have. I watch these kids. They'll be, I don't know, in the 10 years old, and they're doing James Brown music and John Benet Ramsey. It's sexualizing children. What are children doing this bump and grind, Miley Cyrus twerking, whatever that is. I don't know what twerking is. I can only imagine. I guess it's simulated sexual moves with or Cardi B. And it's sexualizing children, and also the sex slavery, child murder, everything else that's connected with it. Royce died in 1923, but Crowley had taken over the OTO in 2021 after exchanging angry letters. During this period, OTO members outside of the USA rarely came into contact with one another. I am arranging to send you the official papers connected to the OTO, but the idea that you should meet other members first is quite impossible. Even after affiliation, you would not meet anyone unless it were necessary for you to work in cooperation with them. I am afraid you have still got the idea that the great work is a tea party. Contact with other students only means that you criticize their hats and then their morals, and I am not going to encourage this. Your work is not anybody else's, and undirected chatter is the worst poisonous element in a humane society. So it's always under the disguise of it being humane, the philanthropists like Bill Gates and who wants to help the poor people of Africa, who are really a test population for his vaccines. I mean, that's why Gates goes from computers to pharmaceuticals, because that's where the money is. That's where, the Obamacare or Clinton care. Obamacare is just Clinton care, which is the care is for corporate profits and making sure that people are addicted by all of these pharmaceutical drugs. That's where you bring in the psychiatric community. You distribute dangerous drugs that are initially described as panaceas that are going to help people, and they do blind trials and all this of Prozac and Adderall and Ritalin, and given to children. And Ritalin and Adderall are methamphetamine based. So children are getting that, plus they're getting caffeine, plus they're so I wonder why they have, personality disorders and all of this other stuff while they're creating their own selfies with a sexualized environment. It's all part of it's all organized and planned at these levels of mastery of these satanic orders. It's still around. See, in 1996, they'll have these bizarre names. Sabazius X. So it mirrors, the papacy, John Paul VI, and the papacy is the antichrist system. Like I say, the three capitals, London and Washington D.C., and the Vatican are sovereign states. I'm saying this in repetition. I think that, like I say, it's so hard to for people who aren't familiar with any of this information and just hear it once to just dismiss it as it's conspiracy theory when it's really just facts. What am I reading from? I'm reading from Wikipedia, so I'm not going to a obscure book and where as it might be not be uh, the sole source of information. These are just uh, excerpts, right, of mission statements, like in the U.S. National Grand Master, right, Sabazius X was appointed in 1996. So what Kenneth Anger was saying in this interview with John Emanuel was that he's just below that. So his position within the OTO, which is taken over by Crowley in 21 to 23, he's within this mission statement of USGL. I'm not sure if he's in which lodge he's in, right? We didn't. Thing with John Emanuel, it's always so frustrating with me, right? The people given these interviews, like these pop people, if you hear Crowley, I mean Anger, or if you hear Crowley or Jimmy Page or whoever it is, they don't follow up with a question. Mm-hmm. Like the natural question would be, well, what is the OTO, Kenneth? Can you talk some more about that? The next question will be something like, what do you think of Jimmy Page? I mean, or it'll be what your fans are really interested in are, did you ever meet Henri Langlois at the Cinémathèque Française? And, be gossip about movies and gossip about this or that. It keeps it on the level of gossip, and that's where, Crowley's making that statement. And it'll all be benign. Undirected chatter is the worst poisonous element in a humane society. So when you're listening to Jimmy Page or Anger, there's a soul of benevolence. Butter wouldn't melt in their mouth, and the stories they'll tell us. Oh well, there's this Bobby Beausoleil, this character that stabbed to death his roommate Gary Hinman, and Manson cut the guy's ear off, then directed Beausoleil to stab him to death. There's no mention of that. It would just be, he's a very unpleasant person that I ordered out of my house because he was having pot. It's really phenomenal to me. Like I asked John Emanuel what he thought of meeting him, and he said, well, he wasn't Mr. Friendly. That was about it. It's like there's no sense of the depth of. I do a little research, and then ask him the questions, but that's how hypnotic and mesmeric all this stuff is. But this is from an interview from 2012, so I wouldn't have known all this stuff. But it's not. I'm not interviewing somebody.
Right.
That to me is why I find Joe Rogan or Russell Brand complete BS, because they don't. You know what I mean? They act credulous, but they don't. They always point at somebody else. He has like the Sopranos guys on. They're talking about Weinstein. So they'll go into how horrible the Weinstein stuff is. Like, he's generally deformed and all of this stuff, and is that sort. But it's as if nobody really knew. When how could you not know this was going on? Everybody knew, but that's what I mean about see no evil, hear no. Like everybody knows women are being abused, but nobody will believe them, so they can't say anything. And that's what Celestial is talking about when she says that the women being abused are so easily, nobody believes them. You say this police officer or that magistrate or this lawyer, you'll be with the Sopranos actors or whoever, or the Seinfeld cast. Or we don't know anything. Or Hillary Clinton. These women are all white trash. Hillary Clinton was the one who, the great feminist, saying all the women, all the sexual charges against Bill are just lies, and they're white trash women. Why would anybody believe Paula Jones or whatever her name was? Or why would anybody believe this string of people who've been, abused or raped or what have you? So this is the deepest evil, the Gnostic Catholic Church, right? Its central activity is the celebration of Liber 15, the Gnostic Mass. Recent years, other rites have been written and approved for use within the church. So the Gnostic Masses would include these satanic fashion shows and satanic masses that have been described by people, underage men who were raped and not believed, and then they're believed, and then these rapist pedophiles are moved to another parish, and now they're up at the top of the Vatican. And it's extraordinary to me how little, for myself, knowing other Catholics, they just won't, it'll be the same thing with the churches in Frederick. It'll be, oh, that's somebody else. That's at another church. It isn't at our church. There's nobody, we don't know anybody like that. It's how, so just stop asking questions. But it's not in my nature not to, find out what's going on if people are being abused within my vicinity, if it's at a church or anywhere else. Questions of legitimacy. Yeah, that's about it. But that's like I say, it's there's this one guy I'd like to get. It's T. Allen Greenfield, called for the resignation of upper management and stepped down from all managerial duties in protest. He went on to write a detailed analysis of the failure of the OTO and the culture of fear. So the fear is you're going to be disposed of or intimidated or have a curse put on you, because that's really what is done is curses are put on people, and then they end up dying, or they end up being incapacitated in ways. And it could be that they're poisoned, right? Because you have this Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh in Oregon, where they were poisoning each other. They were poisoning the townspeople with botulism. They had a biological weapons, their own little biological weapons lab. They were armed to the teeth, like Jim Jones's people. And it's amazing because there are still followers. This guy was Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. He changed his name to Osho. It's got this big band of Buddhism, and they say there's a lot of his hierarchy. They're still practicing it. It's a form of sex. It's a form of tantric sex yoga. It all traces back to what Crowley calls black sex magic. So the uh, promiscuous sex, let's just call it, and without restriction, bestiality, you name it, right? Which is what the so-called sexual liberation movement is. All stems from these practices that go back in time to Egypt. I mean, they go back and back through Roman, Greek, Persian, tantric yoga, right? Sex yoga, all the Japanese Zen Buddhism with all this bondage, domination, the samurai who eviscerate themselves, kamikaze pilots. They're death cultures. They're nihilistic death cultures. All right. I don't know. I don't know. God help us is what's all. I just pray for this country.